Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change in your life. I'm here to guide you, inform you, and hopefully help you to triumph over trauma and the long list of symptoms that come along with it. This podcast series is to bring knowledge, share stories, and open up conversation around hope for those of you that suffer with the difficulties that present themselves in your life from diagnosed or undiagnosed trauma. Labeled or not, I know you need help, and so do those that have graciously taken the time to have these conversations with me. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Week Change Gang. As you might have noticed, the past couple of weeks I've been replaying a few of the older episodes, and I'm going to do that for 2 more weeks, and then right after the first of the year we'll be back to some fresh new episodes. But these ones this month have been very important for this month because December is such a hard time for so many people, and coming into January I think is a great time to be looking at the changes that we want to make, maybe the people that need help. And so that's why I'm replaying a couple of these episodes. And so this week you will hear from an amazing man, and I talked with him about addiction. So here you go. Welcome to the Week Change Gang. We're back into the series around trauma, PTSD, all of those things. As always, I have an amazing person here with me to have some conversations around how he's helping people with PTSD and the traumas. And it's Paul Matthews, and he's a clinical hypnotherapist now for 20 years. You're based in Dublin, Ireland, and your mission, Paul, is to help 20,000 people suffering from PTSD, CPTSD, childhood trauma, and addictions to heal their wounds and reclaim their power and live their full potential. What made you choose that particular mission? First of all, hello. I should say hello and say thank you for being here.
Hi, Laura. Thank you very much for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. That mission is so important to me, to be quite honest. I've worked in homeless organization for 21 years. I just finished in July to go full time with my hypnotherapy. And I've worked with so many people, and too many of them have passed, to be honest. And practically all the clients I worked with suffered with PTSD, CPTSD, dual addiction, and I just felt I had to give back. I wasn't able to use hypnotherapy in the organization that I worked. It was only psychotherapy or counseling, because it was all accredited. But I have a set of skills. I care about people deeply, and I really wanted to be able to help them full time. So as part of that, I'm planning to create a monthly session where anybody who's homeless or in addiction can connect, and I will do this 6-session protocol over 6 weeks. It'll be on a rolling basis, basically, that we both engage in, and offer that to as many people. Anybody that wants to connect can click in, and that's part of that mission, as well as providing private sessions to people as well. The biggest thing that got me into this PTSD and trauma was September 11th, actually. So I was standing in the passport line because I was planning to go to the United States. I was going to New York, and people started talking about a plane hitting one of the towers while we were waiting in line to go into the passport office to get our passport. When I'd left the passport office, I passed by Philips TV shop, and on the huge screen were the towers collapsing. And it was unbelievable that this could happen to your country. And I think everybody in the world, we were just so transfixed watching the TV. It was 24 hours a day, minute by minute. And we were all getting traumatized. It was going to lead to war, all of these things. And to be honest, I felt obligated after a couple of weeks, to help. So I was going to America anyway. So I contacted the Salvation Army in Dublin, and I went with them for 2 weeks, and we worked with some people. And I didn't go to New York City. I went to New York State, a place called Fulton. It's a beautiful little place in New York State. And I worked with people who hadn't left their houses. Now, I was there for Thanksgiving. That's when I went. And they hadn't left their houses since September 11th. So I would go in with a team and we talked to them and go through all the issues. And the first thing that we did was stop watching cable TV.
Right.
Just stop. It's too much. You're getting second by second blows, and people are getting more and more traumatized by what they were seeing. And depending which news channel they looked at, the world was ending, there was going to be war, and people are so traumatized. And that affected me so much. I had been training to be a pastor at the time, previous to that, and I'd done pastoral counseling. So that was the angle I was going in at, on helping the people. And that was fascinating in itself. And we did manage to help a few people leave their houses, which was fantastic. So that was a great experience for me. When I went home back to Dublin, I decided I need to be able to help people. I need to be able to do more for people. And I started doing research, and that's where hypnotherapy hit me. That this was probably the best way at a subconscious level to be able to deal with the trauma that people were going through. And that's how I got started. I started with the National Guild of Hypnotists, did a 6-month course here in Dublin. And that's how I started in hypnotherapy. But my passion was always the PTSD, the trauma. And then when I joined the Dublin Simon community, the addiction side of things as well.
First, going back to what you said about some of that with people not leaving their homes and staying stuck to the TV, I actually saw that happen with my own mother. My mother was so transfixed. And it happens to all of us where you can't look away. It's just like, oh my goodness, and there's more. And they knew that. The news feed, they were getting the best ratings ever because people just couldn't look away. But it was causing that space inside of you to realize this is horrible, this is scary, this is all this, and creating that part to deal with some of that. My mom actually, I think between all of us, we did kind of get her to just stop watching. You can't watch the news for a while. You can't watch anything. Just step away, because she was feeling so horrible and so sad and so scared and all of those things. And that leaves an imprint on you going forward, no matter your age. Whatever age you were at that point, especially for the kids in that time frame, seeing the parents experience that, feeling the fear that was going on as a nation, as a world, as all of that, the unsureness of the path ahead, the unknown, had to have been a terribly scary marker in their life. And those are kids now that are probably experiencing the anxiety and the fear and the problems that start to come up as you do get older and have that. And the addictions. Addiction is a big part of a coping mechanism for those traumas in life. Don't you find that?
Absolutely. The amount of people that I worked with that had severe trauma from childhood, and the coping mechanism became addiction, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever. We tended to work with people with alcohol and drugs. So I worked in the recovery unit where people would be detoxed and then come to us. And I had the privilege of running the whole group program, sitting down with them every day, doing groups and talking to them about their addictions and stuff like that. Going back to the part about September, it was like we were all hypnotized to be fearful. Because in Ireland, I was looking at it, if America can be attacked like that, what hope is for the rest of us? It was this hypnosis. We were all hypnotized that the world was a scary place.
Right.
And yeah, it can be, but it's also a beautiful place to live. It's a fantastic place. I love life. I remember being fearful going to America, hyper-vigilant at the airport when I got there. The soldiers with guns, never seen that before. It just changed everything. And I really felt that part of what I had to do was to help people not to feel those things anymore. That's so important to me. With the addictions, I've worked with, I think, around 5,000 people with addictions in my 21 years, directly. And nearly all of them have the same story. That story is one of not feeling loved, needed, wanted, cared for, and it was having severe trauma in their life. Just that feeling of not being wanted. If you have alcoholic parents, they're not able to care for you. And that child grows up and they go into their teens and bad things happen. They get in with the wrong crowd. They start using drugs and alcohol and just destroys their lives. They become homeless. This is one of the worst countries in the world to become homeless. That's a certainty because of our lack of housing. And that's traumatic enough as well.
Yeah.
So the amount of trauma I saw, and I wasn't able to use a set of skills that I had, which used to drive me nuts.
I was wondering about that.
I could take a person, do some age regression, do effect bridge, do all of these things and help them. But oh no, what I did wasn't accredited. I can understand that from a certain perspective, but there was no, maybe we could consider it,
right.
They just wouldn't allow it. And the amount of people that I worked with that passed was just incredible. Wonderful, beautiful people, but highly traumatized and damaged people. It's just an awful shame. And that's why I've left the Dublin assignment to be able to work with far more people. You know, it's a great organization. Don't get me wrong. Fantastic organization to work for. And I'm better for being there. But I need to help people now more directly and use the skills, you know, that we both have. That's what's really important to me.
Now you have this amazing perspective, I think, at this point, then having worked in that very structured talk therapy, you know, psychological, that aspect of it for so long, and having that skill, like you said, that you knew could really be helpful, but you couldn't use it in that. Using it outside of that, and especially now having left that and moving full time into doing this, tell me a little bit about the difference that you see in how hypnotherapy helps beyond or even differently than what you were doing before. And it's never to downplay things that are in place. I never want to do that because some of that can be really helpful. And if that's what's available to people, use it. Absolutely go use it. I would never say don't do it. Do it if that's what's available to you. But tell me the difference in what you see and how it works for people.
Yeah. Well, the two modalities that we used were CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, and we also used the CRA, which is the community reinforcement approach. Both brilliant, both work extremely well with addiction, but they only scratch the surface. That's the issue. They don't go where the actual root issue is. So we would do lots of mindfulness, but I'd be in there throwing all the hypnotic suggestions in, you know, how fantastic you're going to be amazing. You're not going to feel you want to drink anymore, all of these great things. But even that's not enough, you know. So when I've worked with people with addiction and I can use all the skills that I've developed and learned, the difference is we go to the root cause. We find out what that is and we help them neutralize it. So we're looking for a first synthesizing event and then all the subsequent events that have led to the trauma and to the addiction.
Right.
That's very, very powerful. And you're quite right. Counseling, psychotherapy, CBT are all amazing, but it would take them so many years and they probably would never get to where we can get to in 6 sessions. Maybe even 1 session, we can make a huge difference. And the difference is we bypass the conscious mind and we go in and we do the work directly with which part of them that's the issue. We deal with that issue and we continue working until all those issues are resolved. So a person can go to having full-blown PTSD after up to 6 weeks, can have the majority of that, if not all of it, resolved. And that's the power of the hypnotherapy. And what really opened that up to me is John Watkins' book, Hypnotherapy of War Neuroses, an incredible book to read.
Yes, I just got that book and I'm starting to read. I obviously am aware of a lot of it in there, going through some of the training that we both have been through. But one of the things too is that people, I think, shake their head and go, no way, 6 weeks. You can't make a difference in 6 weeks. And it's like, no, really. And who wouldn't want to just take 6 weeks after living with something for so long, which most people do, before they realize that it's really going to be causing big issues in your life. And then sometimes they live with those big issues for a long time. And so I think sometimes people go, they don't believe that they can actually make a difference. But you've seen it happen, haven't you?
Yeah, I worked with a woman recently. I wrote a post about it. She was a people pleaser, essentially. She wanted to please everybody, and she was undergoing some testing for some conditions, potentially multiple sclerosis. She was undergoing the testing, and I had met her previously a long time ago, and we did a 6-session protocol. And during the age regression session, she realized that the reason she could never say no to anybody, and it stressed the life out of her, even when it went against her needs and wants, she would want to please everybody. She didn't go into a huge amount of detail, but what she told me was, it was my father that I had to please.
Yeah.
I just had to please him all the time, because if I didn't, it was horrendous how I felt. So this was part of the issue, the people pleasing. And then we did the forgiveness section, and she was able to fully forgive her father, which is amazing. That's in 5 weeks. That's what we're up to in 5 weeks.
Right.
Incredible. Now, she's been to a psychiatrist, she's been to a psychologist, and they helped her. Absolutely, of course they did. But they didn't have the tools that we have.
Right.
And that woman is going around now deciding what she wants to do and what she doesn't want to do. She's like a different person. It's truly incredible. And
Well, and I think the difference too with some of this is it's a little bit of what we call, I can't even think of the word at the moment, but it's kind of, we work without having to know all of the deep, dark secrets or having to have them replay something, which if I'm familiar with like CBT correctly, it's kind of a desensitizing by a repetition of having to experience and go through and have conversation about something. Whereas in this particular work, with most hypnotherapy that I'm aware of, I don't know of any that where you do have to sit down and go into it, but especially with this, you might have some conversations around it according to what the client wants to share, but we don't have to know everything. We're going to allow the subconscious, the mind, to go back and find whatever the issue is, because 9 times out of 10 too, somebody will not know. They'll think it's something, oh yeah, I had this, or they will disregard something as being a possible cause to what's going on. But when you really start going back into some of those sessions, something else shows up, and they'll either recognize it or they won't. And either way, it's okay because the mind is recognizing it. Do you find that?
Absolutely. And with that lady, she had no conscious recollection of wanting to please her father.
Yeah.
He never came into the picture. You know, even though the psychiatrist talked about her childhood, that never came up. So that was something that maybe would never have been discovered under the normal psychology, but that came up for her and she recognized it immediately.
Wow.
And was able to forgive in the next session, you know, which is incredible. And that was for her the important part, that ability to forgive and to forgive herself. And the reason she needed to forgive herself is because she had given up so much for other people and neglected herself. And that was so important to her. It's really powerful. And in 6 sessions, there's an awful lot of people out there that if they were to hear, yeah, PTSD and CPTSD can be resolved in 6 weeks, they're going to go, nah, this is a scam. But it isn't. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it.
I have.
This can work.
I actually just had a person who I worked with who we cleared 17 different symptoms in their life that they were dealing with. 17, and not like, oh, this is a little niggle or that. It was some deep stuff that was going on for them for a long time. And it was funny because what she told me, she said, yeah, I was talking to somebody about it and I told them, I don't care. I'm ready to do anything to get rid of how I'm feeling, of how I'm functioning in the world and how it is. And thankfully we were kind of already connected, and she reached out and said, so is what you're doing, does it work for this? And I said, yeah, come on, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a try. And I was so excited for her. So excited to see that all of a sudden, you know, she showed up one time and went, oh my God, it's different. Everything's different. Everything is just different. It's like a switch has been flipped. And that's what can happen for people in those 6 weeks. And I often describe it as just kind of being magical. It's just this little magical thing that happens, and I don't have to understand exactly how or why, but I know that it does. And I'm not the only one. That's why I'm doing this, is to share with so many people around the world that are working in this area and doing this thing. And I love that you have so many other things in your life that you have that back you in terms of the accreditations and all of those things that are there. And you're saying, yes, those are great, yet here's this amazing tool and I have to use it. So I'm going to find a way to use it. Yep. And that's what you've done. That's what you've stepped into and done. So with this goal of helping 20,000 people out there, and hopefully, I know you're still working it out and still working around some of the logistics of it, but are you working with the previous company that you worked with, or are you just kind of now creating your own thing to be able to help people? How are you structuring that for yourself?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I'm not in touch with them, but the plan is to get in touch with themselves and other NGOs in Dublin and in Ireland, of course, or whatever, because it's going to be on Zoom. So my biggest issue is the client group that with, say, the Dublin Islamic community are mostly going to be homeless people who potentially have mental health conditions, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, is how they can hop in and out of it. How that works is the issue for me. That's a logistical issue. Now, I could offer it to all the people in recovery. The majority of them, as long as they don't relapse, would be able to attend the 6 weeks. But that would reduce the amount of people who can attend, because this works with everybody.
Yes, it does.
And what I'm actually up against is when I go to these organizations, the first thing they're going to look for is my degree in psychotherapy and all of this. And I don't have a degree in psychotherapy, but I have other skills that can benefit the clients. So my main job is to go and present to them and show them the efficacy of what we do and the history of it through the First World War, Second World War, Vietnam War, all of these theatres of war where people with shell shock, as it was called back then, became PTSD, combat PTSD, was resolved. So I need to be able to prove through case studies, which is why I'm actually going to offer this locally at a greatly reduced rate to 20 to 30 people and get some case studies from them and do it properly, do a proper research into it, because that's what these organizations will want. That's how you get your foot in the door.
You said locally, so you want that to be people in Ireland that you're working with for that particular case study that you're going to do for yourself. I'm curious, is that going to be one-on-one work, or is that going to be a group, or is that going to be a combination of both? How are you going to play that out?
For the majority of people, it will be a group online session. And for some that it's just not going to work for them, I'll do one-to-ones.
Oh, okay, great.
This works very well on Zoom, and it works very well as part of a group. So it's both.
It does, actually. Is that in the process right now? Are people going to be able to reach out to you and kind of connect with you and ask about that particular program?
The press release to our local press about it, and hopefully it's something different and it's something important with the way the world is going. There's so much trauma in it that I think they'll take that up and they will hopefully do the work for me.
Yes.
By putting it in one of the local rags. And then I will start putting it in various Facebook groups. Because we've got Facebook groups for all our localities here, similar to the US. So I'm going to advertise it locally and then hopefully advertise it Dublin-wide and potentially countrywide as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm excited about that. Do you work with people online outside of Ireland right now? Are you working kind of internationally, globally?
It doesn't matter where you live. As long as you've got a good connection, I'll work with you, to be quite honest.
There you go. That's great. So I'm going to make sure that I share some of the information, but can you tell us real quick what the best place is to connect with you?
You can connect with me on Facebook. It's Paul Matthews Hypnotherapy. You can look at my website, which is www.paulmatthewshypnosis.ie.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds great. I'm super excited to be able to share this with people. Thank you so much for being on this with me and in this journey with me. I appreciate it, Paul.
It's my honor and my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Laura.
You bet. Thank you. All right, Change Gang. I hope that this has been useful and informative and encouraging to you in some way. And I hope that you'll meet me right here, same time next week. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting and helpful to you in some way. If so, find someone to share it with. Maybe it will help them too. If you'd like to know more about anything discussed here today, you can find all the places to connect with me and the guest speakers in the show notes. Or go to lauraordile.com, LauraOrdile.com, and you can reach out to me there. Until next time, ask when you need help, be kind to yourself, and have a happy day.